Hi everybody, it's Blue Jacket 66, Dave here for another video. This video I'm going to show a couple of my recent pickups, but primarily in this video I want to talk to my friends and maybe have a little discussion about this virus breakup, this coronavirus, the COVID-19 coronavirus that came out of China. There's a lot of fear and a lot of panic. Most people have fear and panic because of the unknown. And these viruses really are not unknown. This is a novel virus, meaning it is a new virus. So in itself, its genome is unknown. So we're not quite sure what it's going to do. And as more cases come along, we'll have more opportunity to know what mortality rates are, who is most afflicted, what the vectors seem to be, etc. Now, what authority do I have to talk on this? Not much. I'm a physician, medical doctor. I have a bachelor's degree in microbiology, which I did a lot of virology with and immunology back in the day. So back in the day, in the early 80s, I was doing genetic engineering and I was gene splicing and creating Staph aureus bacteria that were multiple resistant to antibiotics, and we did it for fun. Things have changed, and it's a big deal out there, and this is something that I knew back then. I was just a kid. I was 19 or 20, and genetic engineering at that time it was coming about, and this strange thing called HTLV3 was starting to kill people, evidently primarily in the homosexual community, and it was a big study and a big deal back then. So I do have experience with this, and I have experience with infectious diseases. Through my career, I've been exposed to it all: tuberculosis, hepatitis B, hepatitis C. I've been in people's chests while people are doing CPR. I'm in their chest putting tubes in, and blood is flowing on me like you were out in a rainstorm, and that blood was infected with HIV. So I know about fear, and I know about infectious diseases, and I continue to deal with that every day. I'm not an infectious disease doctor. I'm not a virologist. I am specialized in emergency medicine and trauma. But I see a lot of stuff every day, including common cold viruses, including influenza, and I see babies die of RSV viruses that give you the sniffles. And I had a 16-year-old boy a couple weeks ago who died of influenza. So it's serious stuff, but we need to take a step back. And when you see the headlines on Fox News and CNN that the first US case has died, I'm saddened by that. But we've got to realize that infectious diseases have been killing us since the advent of man. What I want to talk about primarily is how I can perhaps help you and the things that I do. You don't have to do anything I do, and I don't want to predict what's going to happen with this virus and what's going to happen to the world. I'm going to speculate a little bit because I just want to calm you a little bit. But let's remember, so far, with this COVID-19 virus, there's been about 90,000 infections, supposedly. I suspect there are way more, and there's 3,000 deaths. But even if you take those 90,000 known cases and 3,000 deaths, that's a mortality rate of about 3%. That's nothing to scoff at, but it's not Ebola, okay? And I've been around Ebola, okay? I've been around the scare in trauma centers and emergency departments where people come in with temperatures of 104 that just got off from Africa, blood's flying, poop's flying, and it's pretty scary stuff to don that stuff and go in with those people. Let me say that person did not have Ebola, but I've been around all these scares. So last year, influenza, there were 35.5 million cases. Of that, there was a little over 34,000 deaths. So that mortality rate is quite a bit lower. It's 0.1%. So what can we expect from this virus? I don't know. For all I know, it's going to burn itself out in a week or two, or the summer heat's going to go and it's going to burn itself out. I think that's unlikely. But if we extrapolate that to influenza, it could be pretty serious. If the mortality rate's 3% and it ends up infecting 35.5 million people the way influenza did, you're going to have a million dead people. And that's serious. It's terrible. I would think with influenza immunity and influenza vaccines, probably more people are going to get this virus than they had influenza, because there is no vaccine currently. My alma mater, K-State, where I did my undergrad in all my microbiology, you can Google them. They're currently, some of their researchers actually have some patents going with some drug companies to potentially start manufacturing some antiviral medicines. Treating viruses is completely different than bacteria. Bacteria it's completely different. That's why antibiotics don't work about viruses. Bacteria are DNA organisms that have cell walls, and viruses don't. There are RNA organisms that have to have a host to survive. I mean, bacteria, they live on the frickin' bottom of the ocean sucking metal off the Titanic, and they'll live for millennium, where viruses don't. Viruses need a host, and they live various amounts of time. Some of the stomach viruses live outside a host, on the table, on the floor, on your toilet seat for a week or more. But like the HIV virus, you put it on the table, dry it out, exposed to the sun, it lasts seconds, and then it's dead. And I think this coronavirus, I think that they think that it dies outside the host, meaning on your neighbor sneezes on your table and you don't know it within minutes. So I'll just say what I think is going to happen. I think that this is going to spread, and I think me or you are going to get this virus, and you may or may not know you have it. They certainly report the first death in Washington State from this, but I know they're not really reporting all the people that tested positive for it that had no symptoms at all. 0 symptoms. Okay? No symptoms. They tested positive for it, they felt perfectly fine. Then after a couple weeks, they tested negative. And the majority of people, have respiratory infections. So that's what it is. It affects the respiratory system, causing respiratory fluid hypoxemia, and that's why the elderly or people with some chronic lung problems and people with comorbidities, severe heart disease, etc., are certainly more at risk. So I think that it's going to keep it on and going, and a lot of people are going to be infected. A lot of people are going to be asymptomatic with it. Most people are going to have colds, but some people are going to get very sick, and the death rate could be high. 1 million, maybe more. I don't know. But let's remember that 10 million people die every year from cancer, and that 1.25 million people die every year in motor vehicular accidents. So there's a lot of bad things out there. And I think the worst thing that we can do is panic. I'm not telling you what to do, but I don't understand. I understand that, companies, etc., but I'm not emptying out my 401k. I'm not stocks. I don't have a freezer full of chicken now, but I will take just common precautions. And that's really what I want to talk about, is just some common precautions that we can do. And what do I do to protect myself? And I try to protect myself every day. Number one, this virus, like most viruses, is spread by the respiratory tract, people coughing, sneezing, blowing their nose, aerosolizing, and then by mouth, touching, coughing, things landing on things, touching your hands, touching someone else, etc. Let's talk about the respiratory part of it. These viruses are very small. They're like 0.12 microns. And so they're easily spread by a cough. You don't cough and these viruses float around and get you around the corner in the next room. Usually, 5 feet or so. I suppose these water droplets that we cough out are usually actually less than a micron. You think about coughing and sneezing and have these rockets of stuff coming out, but a great majority of what you cough and sneeze out is microscopic, like less than a micron. And unfortunately, these viruses tend to hang on to those microscopic, the smallest of our water droplets, more than our larger droplets. But it's not going to float around in the air. These microscopic water molecules dry up, they evaporate, and the virus goes wherever. And again, they die without a host within 4 minutes. So you want to protect yourself from sick people. And the most important, I think, is that if you get sick, protect other people. Don't go to the store. Send someone else to the store. You stay home in bed. And I did buy some Tylenol, and I buy a sack full of Halls. Okay? That's what I have. What about mask? We see people all around the country with masks. And there's two types. The main type of mask you see is this paper surgical mask. This is something that I wear at work all the time when all these cold stuff's going on. Or if I got a coughing kid, with a temperature of 103, or maybe I have strep throat. They cough, they're all over me. I'm getting it all the time. And to me, I felt comfortable with this. In reality, on paper, these don't work so well. Here's a paper, and this is a strand of hair. Just the strand of hair. That's about 15 microns, okay? Now this one here is what this surgical mask can filter. It can filter like 2 to 10 micron particles, whether it's a booger or a piece of dust or a bacteria or a virus, okay? Now our N95 mask, which I'll show you in a second, that can filter down to like 0.3 microns, which is pretty good, okay? That would be that little dot right there. That's about 0.3 microns. What about these other little things there? Oh, that's the COVID-19 coronavirus. Those are 0.12 microns. So here's a 0.12 micron, and my surgical mask here can only filter, to 2 to 10 microns. And my N95 mask, down to 0.3. So on paper, you're like, why the hell wear one of these masks? Well, certainly if you're sick, you need to wear a mask, even these paper ones, to prevent you from expelling some of those water droplets. Now, we already said that those water droplets go down to 0.1 or to a micron, which should go through this. But anecdotally, okay, when the CDC says no, you don't need to wear a mask, you don't need to wear a mask, I agree, you don't need to wear a mask. But when this thing hits, and if it does, and you're going out to the grocery store, or you're going out to a place where there's a lot of public, there's nothing wrong with wearing a mask, and I would wear a mask. The problem is there's going to be a shortage of even these cheap paper masks. I got an email from my work today saying that they anticipate there's going to be a big shortage, and believe me, we've got warehouses full of these, and that they're saying they don't want us to wear a mask unless you have someone with a respiratory infection and a fever. So everybody else, they're going to not give us good protection. These are the N95 mask, okay? They filter down to 0.3 microns. These are hard to get now. And if you go on Amazon, normally I think these would have been probably $9.99 for a 25 pack. And now they're asking $300 for a pack if you can find them. They're really jipping you. This is probably, when this thing hits, what I'll be wearing at work. I think the good news about it is that none of the workers in China who are wearing these N95 masks, I don't think any of the ones that were wearing this mask came down with the virus. So mask, I don't think that's the most important thing. I really don't. I think the most important thing is keeping away from people that's sick. When you're sick, staying home. And if you want to wear one of these masks when you're out and about, I would not tell you not to, okay? What's the most important thing? It's hand washing, okay? Hand washing is in real hand washing for 20 to 30 seconds. And when I go in a public bath, I haven't touched a doorknob in a public place, whether it's the front door to Target or the bathroom at Barnes & Noble. I haven't touched a doorknob in decades. I've got this thing down, and so does Caden. We look like dorks. We just put our shirt over our hand and we push the handle, or we use our shoulder. So I will enter any place like that not touching a doorknob. I'm not going to touch the faucet of the sink. I will get a paper towel, turn on the water, use the paper towel to get my soap, and then 20 to 30 seconds of good soapy lathering, and that means getting each finger, okay? And this motion actually is helpful in killing. Even without soap, water will wash off these viruses. Then you rinse, and for God's sakes, don't touch that handle to turn the water off. Go get another paper, use your same paper towel that you just dried your hands off to turn off the water and close the door. What about these hand sanitizers? They work, okay? I I had stocked up on this, and you just put a big glob, and again, it's not just letting it sit there. You're supposed to really work it into each finger and all your hands until it's dry. What we tend to do is just put some on, do that, good. You're really supposed to just keep rubbing, working it all around, and that's what kills the viruses and bacteria, and it does work. Okay? So I would go out and get a bunch of hand cleanser, and these little ones for your loved ones or even for your kids' backpack. It's just a good idea with flu season, cold seasons, and colds, and especially with this virus coming. I would kind of stock up on that a little bit, because you really want to keep your hands washed often, and also use this hand sanitizer because it really does work. So, in a nutshell, we have really fear of when we hear virus and we hear death, we've been, watching anything from horror movies to TV shows to science fiction to books, and we've heard about these viruses before, right? The SARS virus, it was in Japan, China, whenever it was, 8 years ago. I mean, that was a freaking deadly virus, and it was somewhat the same strain of this one, but that one was killing 15% of people between the age of like 30 or 25 and 45, and over 65, it killed 50% of people. And that MERS, that Middle Eastern respiratory virus, that was nasty as heck. But you kind of forgot about those, right? My hope is this will run its course, we'll get over it, and a few years from now we'll talk about, hey, do you remember when that crazy virus scare was going on? This country has excellent health care, and real people who really know what's going on are out there working on it. They're working on vaccines, they're working on antiviral medicines, and the epidemiologists they're working on how to limit this. And sometimes it is quarantines, and sometimes it's closing schools. My daughter's over in Italy, kind of stuck there, and it's being hammered, it's being hammered over there. And so I've got a care box with a bunch of Lysol wipes and hand sanitizer sent there, because they keep going to the store and there's like nothing there. You should be very happy you live in the United States of America. But we'll get through it. It's scary, but it'll pass, and I don't know if you're going to get this. And if you do, you may not even know it. You may have a cold. I think it's very unlikely that anything worse is going to happen, but it's going to spread. But again, cold spreads and flu spreads, and it will be something that just don't panic and just be smart. Keep your hands washed. If you can find some masks, wear those when this thing hits. Right now it's not necessary, but go ahead and get you and your family's habit and talk to them about hand washing. So Kate and I, his friends were out today, and we went to the mall. Okay, so we're not touching anything and whatnot, but you're touching things all the time. Your hands are on the escalator, right? We went to the store afterwards. There's the shopping cart. So maybe when this thing's getting kind of bad, you have your Lysol wipes with you in the car, maybe just the pack of them, almost like baby wipes, and just kind of wipe down the carts before you do that, and have your hand sanitizer. So after you got to hold on the escalators, and afterwards you can use the hand sanitizer. Just start getting in the habit a little bit now, because if this thing gets rough, you want to be in the good habit of prevention, because prevention's the big thing. If you get sick, you take some Tylenol and Halls, and hopefully it's nothing worse than that. So, what's this have to do with baseball cards? Doesn't have a damn thing to do with baseball cards. However, again, I'm not an alarmist, and I'm not worried about this. I'm not. I don't want my family and loved ones to get sick, but personally, I got bigger worries than that. I'm not worried about it. However, I'm also not an idiot. So if this thing's flaring up pretty good come time of the National, I'm not getting on an airplane. That's stupid. Get on an airplane, flying all the country with people from all over the place if there's a contagion out there. Wait till next year. I'll be honest with you, Kate and I are going down to see Mike and Andy down in Texas the end of April. I don't know. If this thing's flaring up, we can put that off till another day. But I don't want to do unnecessary exposure. Right now, it's not a thing. I mean, there's a handful of cases, right? Remember the flu? There were 35.5 million cases. Okay, so we're early in on this, and there's really no worries. But if it flares up like flu season, where everybody's sick and whatnot, try to don't go out where there's a lot of people, and just be smart. Keep your hands washed. You'll be good. Okay. Heck, let's look at some baseball cards in a bit. Okay, I'm back again. It's Sunday morning, the following day, after that previous little clip there about the coronavirus. So I want to go over a couple of cards that I got recently. The first, you may recall, what was it, a week and a half ago, I'd gotten from eBay a 1963 Post Serial Mickey Mantle that I thought was in very good condition. It looked excellent. It had all the borders on it, and I thought it could grade. So the thing about these hand-cut cards is most of them don't grade. You get authentic, and if you do get a number, these are Jello cards cut off boxes from the early 60s, so it's difficult. So I sent it off to SGC, kept my fingers crossed, and was ecstatic that it came back a 7. We'll take a closer look at these cards in just a second. So, really a pretty example. I think SGC is graded maybe 1, 7, and 2 or 3 higher. And PSA is graded a few 7s, and I think the total population in PSA for 7 and above is around 10. So I scored on that. So we'll take a good look at that. They're blank backs, of course, because they were cut off the back of cereal. The second thing I got really excited about this is a 1933 DeLong Jimmie Foxx. I have a Gehrig, Lou Gehrig. He's the biggie in this set. Not tons of crazy superstars in this set, but really interesting. And I used to seriously dislike these cards, but they grew on me. So I got the Gehrig and an altered, if you can find that card where I talk about altered cards. And this is the Jimmie Foxx. Probably won't pursue any other of the cards in the set. Here's the back. It talks about the fat part of the bat. Jimmie Foxx, like other great batsmen, is careful in the choice of his bat, etc. So this is one of the continuing series of famous Major League Baseball players, each card with a different tip on inside baseball. Play ball gum is pure and fine quality as any made, and it contains real ethylene. And it's copyrighted 1933 by the DeLong Gum Company. So, a couple cool pickups. I know John Mangini likes these DeLongs. He'd like to get a Gehrig sometime. Pretty sure he has a Fox. So, let's take a close-up look at these, and then we'll call it a day.